Greetings. Just today I saw this post, this social media post, which is actually more than 2 years old. It presents essentially a lexicon of Lashawan Quadash. It was apparently posted by a member of GOCC. However, some of the more interesting entries therein go back to the original school at One West. And therefore, I'd like to look at some of the entries therein as it relates directly to the question of how modern is Lashawan Quadash. To begin, look at the entry for alligator. Thanayan al-Gayatawar. Thanayan is just tanin, which meant dragon or monster, but in modern Israeli Hebrew means alligator or crocodile. As for al-Gayatawar, it should be obvious that that's just an English loanword into modern Hebrew. It's the word alligator, transcribed into Hebrew characters. Let's look at another example. The entry for artichoke is arataya shawak, which is obviously the word artichoke transcribed into Hebrew characters. In modern Israeli Hebrew, there are loan words from other languages, including alligator for alligator and artichoke for artichoke. However, whoever made this list looked at those words and didn't know that they were modern loan words. And we can look at another example along these lines. Look at the entry for asparagus, asa paragawas. Isn't it obvious what that is? And there are other humorous examples. Let me scroll through and I'll find another one. Okay, here, take a look at this. The entry for broccoli, barakwawalai. I mean, come on. It should be obvious what that is. It's just the word broccoli transcribed into the Hebrew script, which then this person just put a Lashawan Quadash pronunciation on it. Broccoli is an Italian word. It's the plural of broccolo. It's not ancient Hebrew. It is, however, a loan word incorporated into modern Hebrew. Scrolling through, here's another example. The entry for coffee, kwapa, which is really just the modern word cafe, which is yet another loan word from a foreign language. Anyway, let's scroll through for another example. Check out the word dawalapayan for dolphin. And there are other modern loan words as we scroll through. For example, the entry for eggplant, Hatsīl. Now, that's just the modern Israeli Hebrew word Hatsīl. I challenge anyone to find that word in reference to eggplant in a Hebrew text before the 1800s. The reality is, it was coined by Avraham Luns in the 1800s, in the late 1800s, as the modern Hebrew word for eggplant. As I scroll through here, it's worth noting that one of the knocks against modern Israeli Hebrew is the number of neologisms and especially new words that were created under the influence of European terms. Well, it can be said the same is true of Lashawan Quadash. Here's another example. Potato is rendered tapawach adama, but all that is the modern Israeli Hebrew term tapuach adama, which itself was a modern creation, a modern neologism influenced by a French term for potato, which is pomme de terre, which literally means apple of the earth. Tapuach adama means earth apple. So that gives us another example of a modern creation, a modern neologism being rendered just with a Lashawan Quadash pronunciation. And there's other examples. Here's one of my favorites. Check this out. They have a word for television, for TV. And I remember seeing this in the many years ago. It goes back to One West, and Tahar is on record recounting them having a word for television.
I remember when Ariel taught the Hebrew, and there were certain words, like the word for television, they would kind of say it in a Hebrew sounding way.
So TV is rendered ra'athaba, which is actually two words. It's the word ra'ah, which is the verb lir'ot, which means to see, rendered in the third person masculine singular, perfect tense. Now, keep in mind that, proponents of Lashawan Quadash almost never conjugate verbs. They just keep using, the root. So they probably intended it as seeing or something like that. And then teva is box or even arc. So they were trying to say, seeing box or something like that. And I mean, it should be obvious that there was no ancient Hebrew word for TV. Anyway, let's scroll through. Here's another one. And there's a word for tomato. It's rendered ᶜaghbaniyah. Now, it should be obvious. Tomatoes come from the Americas. There were no tomatoes in ancient Israel, in ancient Palestine. Now, they just put a Lashawan Quadash spin on the modern Israeli Hebrew term, عגבנייה. Now, عגבנייה was coined by Yechiel Mikl-Bines, who is a Russian Hebraist, and he used the ayin gimel beit root, which can refer to lust or passion, because in other European languages, tomato is sometimes called the fruit of love, Okay, I'm going to keep scrolling, but, really, at this point, one has to say that if modern Israeli Hebrew is going to be waved off as mere Yiddish, honestly, shouldn't Lashawan Quadash likewise be waved off as a modern creation that is mere Yiddish? Paleo-Yiddish, but Yiddish nonetheless? Anyway, Tovit is rendered Tawaya. I guess they dropped the bait. Now, maybe that's just a mere typo, but check out the entry for Sirach. They rendered it Kahalath, which they're confusing Ecclesiastes with Ecclesiasticus, as Ecclesiastes is called Kohelet, but Ecclesiasticus is not. Anyway, look at for the three holy children, they rendered holy children as Kodash Yaladyam. That's an example of a proponent of Lashawan Quadash thinking in English while trying to produce a statement in Hebrew. The adjective should follow and mirror the noun that it's modifying. So instead of, even in Lashawan Quadash, instead of Quadash Yaladyam, it should be Yaladyam Quadashyam, or something like that. One is tempted to call that Yiddish. But anyway, moving on, we can go to another example. Look at the entry for Bel and the Dragon. Bel is rendered Baal. They seem to have missed that there's an ayin in there. It should be Baal or Baal or something like that. But anyway, look at another example. Look at the names for the New Testament. Maracas, and Lawakwas. These are obviously, Latin and Greek names. Just to recast is Lashawan Quadash. Corinthians is rendered Qua Waragayam, which seems clear to me. They confused the nun for Gimel and accidentally missed the Tau. Continuing to scroll on, the term for Galatians, they clearly dropped the Gimel. Ephesians gets rendered Apamyam because they confused the Samek for a Mem Sophit. And then we come to an interesting example. Check out how Thessalonians is rendered. It gets rendered Chasalawanaya, which is because they mistook the Tau for a Chet, and that's how you get Cha instead of Tha, which is how they rendered the Tau in Lashawan Quadash. Funny stuff. Anyway, the Latin term Titus is rendered Tayatawas. The Greek name Philemon gets rendered Payalaya Manan. Also interesting, in their rendering of Hebrews, they rendered it instead of I because they missed that there's an I in there, interesting enough. Peter gets rendered Patar, which is bizarre. They're just working from the English there. I mean, they didn't even try for Petros and rendered it Patarawas or something. John is Yahawan is also bizarre. And I've reached the end of the list in this more than 2-year-old social media post. By the way, you can see the date at the bottom of the screen. However, many of these terms are older than the post. Like I said, some of them go back to 1 West. Most of them go back to 1 West. Whatever the case, the point is, Lashawan Quadash is not ancient Hebrew. It's not ancient Hebrew. Just like modern Israeli Hebrew, it has a number of modern neologisms, including neologisms that it got from modern Israeli Hebrew. Isn't that ironic? That Lashawan Quadash is supposed to be the ancient alternative to modern Hebrew, yet it winds up taking terms from modern Hebrew? That's ironic. But aside from that, there's also a huge number of foreign words in Lashawan Quadash, and I think that's enough. That's food for thought. I look forward to the comments of others.